All right, okay, so ladies and gentlemen, next thing is about talent. Human resources, very important subject in the startup business, of course, a long time topic, of course, in all the businesses, but especially in the startup business. Our next speaker will talk about, are you ready for the future? Strategy follows structure. Your startup is growing rapidly, of course. Everybody wishes this to you, that the startup is growing. You start like from 7 to 70 employees. All this will be handled, and all this is a really interesting topic. And our next speaker will share with you some learnings, and he talks about how to minimize growth pains through early organization. And as we heard before from Yossi, again, talent is very important. So the search for talent is here the subject in this next speech. He's the founder of Personio, and he is here live on stage. And I think with a microphone, please welcome Hanno Renner. Hanno.
All right, good afternoon everyone. My name is Hanno. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Personio, and over the next 20 minutes or so I'm going to talk to you about phases of fast growth, particularly headcount growth. So phases where the company doubles or triples its headcount in a very short period, meaning adding a lot of people into your team, into your company. And I'm going to share with you the learnings we made when going through such a phase, but also will tell you some sort of takeaways of how you can prepare for such a phase and how you can be ready to grow 10x in 12 months. But before I start into the topic, let me quickly give you a background about Personio. So we at Personio are building the HR operating system. That means that we're building in the software for small and medium companies like Visual Statements from Benedict, which is actually one of our customers, which cover the whole employee life cycle from recruiting, managing, and developing your employees. We founded the company in 2015 here in Munich. We're located at the Gärtnerplatz, and we then first bootstrapped for the first 1.5 years, and were able to sort of grow the company in a bit, and then we're able to raise a seed round of 2.5 million in 2016, and last summer another 12 million in a Series A. But what's the important part of this talk is that we grew from sort of 5 people to 50 people in less than 12 months. So it's actually backfiring a little bit. And yeah, I want to talk to you about this phase and what we learned from it and how you can prepare if you are heading into such a phase. So this is what I just told you about. This was the phase of bootstrapping. This was roughly 3 years ago when we founded the company. At the beginning, just as founders, then we added a few working students, a few early employees, and through some first revenues from our initial customers, we were able to grow without an investment, and we're able to sort of add up to 7 people. And then this was the point where we raised our seed round, and it was sort of the inflection point for our headcount, where we were able to sort of add a bunch of people. So this is actually a graph from our own Personio tool internally. There's the headcount report, and here you see sort of how many people we have in which functions. And after that seed round, we had this growth phase. This is where we are now. We're now 75 people, and yeah, this is sort of the phase I want to talk to you about today. Sorry, that's the wrong button. This is the phase I want to talk to you about today. And yeah, especially what we've done at this point and how we prepared. And the reason why we were able to prepare is because I'm a first-time founder myself, so I didn't know how to run or even design a 75 people organization or even one that can scale beyond that. But we were able to have angel investors in that seed round who were supporting us in designing our organizations, and that learnings is what I want to share with you. This is a quick overview of the topics which we're going to touch. So we'll talk about formulating a core vision and the core purpose of your company. We talk about how to design the organization. That's part of the title. And we talk a bit about goal setting and measurement and how you can make sure that the people in your company are actually doing the things which lead you to reaching this. And then afterwards, or sort of surrounding all this and being underlying, is sort of the part of hiring and getting the right people into your company, and I'll also share some learnings on what we've done there and how we managed to grow. So first of all, if you're a small company, if you founded your business with 2-3 other people, you're sitting in one room and pretty much everyone knows what you're working on, obviously, because you founded a company and it's just you, and then you add a few people, but you're still in one room, and it's very easy to communicate what you're working on and why you're doing this. But as you grow and add more people, you really want to have everyone still to know what you're here for and what you're aiming at. And that's why I think it's really important to somehow formulate your vision and your sort of vision. There's different wordings to it, different frameworks, but somehow communicate why you're doing what you're doing and what you want to achieve. And we choose this framework of sort of consisting of a core purpose, a strategic vision, and a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. But in the end, this should answer the questions of the reason we're here, how we want to get there, what we want to achieve, and how do we know when we reached it? How do we measure the progress towards our vision and towards our purpose? And this is on the one hand really important to sort of align your company, you align your team on what you're working on. Once you grow, once you have different functions, and not everyone knows what you're working on, but also is an underlying topic for goal setting, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. So regarding our own internal framework, our core purpose is enabling better organizations. We do that through the strategic vision by enabling modern companies to recruit, manage, and develop their people through software that increases HR process efficiency and data quality. And our BHAG is to become the leading HR management and recruiting solution for SMEs in Europe by 2020. Why is, so this now is just a few sentences and sounds quite simple, but we spent a full weekend only discussing around that and formulating it, because this is really try to kind of, when you tell the story of where you want to head to condense that into these 3 statements and really know what you're doing, and repeat that over and over again. So every Friday in our weekly all team meeting, as of yesterday evening as well, these statements are the ones which are the first on our first 3 slides, which I communicate over and over again to sort of keep people reminding it. And whenever we have new people joining the company, there's this session where I explain them exactly what's behind that statements and why we choose them and how they can also participate and help sort of going towards that vision. So based on that, you now know where you want to go to and where you're heading, but you also need to know how you get there and what you need in order to achieve these goals. And that's about sort of designing your organization. And you can't predict the future. You cannot know what's going to happen and what you're going to need, but you can make a best guess in the beginning, and thereby you're well better off than just adding people somewhere where you think you need them. So taking a step back and sort of thinking ahead, what will you be and what do you need in order to achieve what we've just discussed before. And on the one hand, it helps you then hire the right people at the right time and think ahead what functions you need. But it also helps you sort of to get to your unique organization design. Because there's a lot of books out at how a perfect startup looks like. And I do rely also on these blog posts and other readings. And I think they're very valuable, but they're all just standards. And every organization is different, and you have very different needs depending on how your organization looks like. So for us, the key to getting there is sort of designing mission-based teams. And that can be transformed to everyone. So what we did is we looked at the customer journey, so what our customers actually from hearing first about us to getting the product shipped, what do they go through, and how do we have teams that are dedicated to help that, and missions that help them know what to do. This is how our organization looks like, and just now, if you just read sort of the blue tags, looks quite obvious. Yeah, we have a marketing team, we have a sales team, customer success is actually our largest team with over 20 people. But this all looks very similar, or like something you would expect. But with these missions above here, and there's a little bit of background behind it as well, we really know for every problem and everything we tackle, who is responsible for it, and who, in which mission does it fall. And we also then don't say, okay, we have a marketing team and that's only marketing people in there, and in the product team there's only product people or engineers, because if in the marketing team, in order to have their mission generate inbound leads, to achieve that, they need our website and they need to further develop our website. So we do not want them to having to rely on the product engineering team and having to sort of interfere with their goals by getting their resources. So if we have someone, if a team needs some resource to achieve their mission, we hire it internally. And that's, I think, the key, what we're doing here is to not just get a standard team setup, but really try to hire the people everyone needs to achieve their missions. And then if you combine all these missions and look on your organization from the top, this is what you should have in order to achieve your core purpose, and this should fulfill, sort of adding all these together should give you a holistic view of how your organization should look like and what you need. So now once you've designed your organization, you have a bunch of teams, you have people working within the teams, and for us right now it's 75 people, and you want to align them somehow, and you don't want to do some top-down management, you don't want to walk into each of the rooms finger pointing people towards a direction, but you give them the core purpose and you want them to walk towards it. But how do you get to that? How do you get your people to really think about, in the next 3 months, how can I get the company with my team closer to a strategic vision? And just, again, different management concepts, different ways of doing this. One concept which we're using and which I find a lot of benefits in is the OKR concept. Maybe a quick question, who has heard of OKRs before? Yeah, roughly 30% maybe. So OKRs is objective and key results. It's a management framework. It got established at Intel a while ago and then got really sort of hip and sexy when Google and LinkedIn and a bunch of other companies were implementing it. But the reason why we're using that is not because it's sexy and industry standard and technology industry, but because I really believe in these 3 benefits. With OKRs, you help people connect their daily task with a strategic vision. So you really help everyone to know what they're doing, how it feeds through their OKRs into the company vision. They help you create transparency among the organization, and they help employees to prioritize. And because in the startup, as you know, there's always too many things to do. Everyone has sort of things falling off their table, but you want them to have the right things falling off their table and to really focus on the things that are important to get to those OKRs. So maybe for the ones that have never heard of OKRs, the way they are structured is there's an objective, and each team might have several objectives per quarter. So we have company-wide yearly OKRs and then quarterly team OKRs or department OKRs, and each objective then is measured by key results. So an objective in sales could, for example, become the leading cloud HR solution for SME companies, and by tripling our MRR. So it's a little bit visual, but it's not really measurable yet. It's sort of a little bit fuzzy, but it really describes what we want to do there. And then the key results tell us how we do that. So we measure, for example, our revenue added, we measure the conversion rate, or whatever in that team makes sense to sort of describe that goal in a numeric value. And what's really important for setting these goals, and that's, I think, transferable to any concept you're using, is that you're doing a bottom-up goal setting. So you want the persons to really feel that they own those goals. So you set the frame, you tell them where the company is heading to, and that's something which you, with your founder and senior management team, have to define. But then once this is done, you want them, I mean, those are the experts. I couldn't walk into our marketing team today and tell them we have to do this, this, and that, because I have no idea about marketing, but they work with it on a daily basis. They should know best how to achieve our goals in the next quarter, and that accounts for each of the teams. So you want to give them ownership, you want them to define the goals bottom up. We then challenge them in the management team, but this is a really important part. The second part, and this is something which we had to learn over the years, is setting goals output-driven. So what does that mean? If you set an input-driven goal, I'll give you an example again for marketing because it's quite graspable. And for example, we talked about social media in the past, I think at the past talk. So if you, for example, say we want to post 75 times on Facebook in the next quarter, this is our goal. And the marketing team sets that goal. That's a very input-driven goal. We set a number and we say we want to do exactly that, and so we do that 75 times. And there's now 2 things that can go wrong with that. Either after the first 10 posts, the marketing team figures out that this just doesn't work, that maybe social media posts is not the way to go, and you find that out early, which is great. And then there's 2 things. Either they say, okay, we cannot reach our goals anymore, so they forget the goals and just do something else, which is a little bit counterintuitive because then you don't measure your progress anymore. Or even worse, they just continue to do those 75 social media posts and end up just doing something which they found out early that doesn't work. So that's an input-driven goal. The other alternative would be we want to create 75 marketing qualified leads in the next 3 months. So marketing qualified leads for us is an internal definition of how we know a lead which has a specific qualification, which is then handed over to sales. And we know that if we can create these 75 leads, this is a good quarter, and we can after the quarter say, yeah, we achieved a good goal. And in order to get to these kind of goals, now throughout the quarter, the marketing team has the autonomy to decide how they want to get there. So they can try social media posts, and if 75 social media posts gives them 75 leads, then great, that's the way to go. But they might also find out they try this and they try something else, and then after the third initiative they really figure out what works, because they always look at that number, that output-driven goal, and they see how it's moving and whether it's moving. And that's what we really learned, which is really important, that goals are set output-driven, and that people really feel that they can have the autonomy to work towards them. That's not sort of a rigid framework where you just tell them, okay, this is what you do for the next 3 months, and you cannot go here and here, and you shouldn't even look somewhere else. So this is a really important part around goal setting. Maybe to give you an example, sorry, I should have actually given that slide a little bit earlier, but this example I just gave, this is now a different one, but input-driven would be we want to produce, launch 5 webinars by next quarter, and output-driven is we want to get 200 leads through premium content. And this could be a premium content, but maybe there's 10 other ways that work much better. Yeah, so the last part I think I want to sort of close this talk with is the hiring. So we now talked about that we want to design this core purpose and want to tell people where we want to head. We talked about designing an organization in order to get there, and we talked about goal setting in order to know whether we're on track. But for all of this, you need people. You need an organization. The organization you staffed, you design needs to be staffed by people. And what we learned in the recruiting process, which is, in my opinion, for any growing startup, probably the key thing to do. Like, this is the most important thing. If you don't recruit the right people, you most certainly fail. So what we did is, on the one hand, we designed a standardized recruiting process, and I'll show you in a bit. And we have different people in that recruiting process that are involved for different reasons. And one is avoiding urgency bias. So if I'm the head of sales in a startup, and I need, in order to reach my targets, I need 5 more people in the team, then I want to hire them as quick as possible. And then even if there's maybe 1 really good candidate, 2 are okay, and then there's these other 2 candidates which I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't really hire them if I wouldn't need, but I really have this urgency, I need to hit my targets, I need to hire them. And that's, I'll explain in a second, why you should involve someone else into the hiring process, which sort of is avoiding that. And then beforehand, define and get clear about the ideal candidate. What are you actually looking for? Not throughout the process of, okay, I really like that person, that's why I'm hiring it, but really define what qualifies for a good candidate. And then a little bit sort of trust your gut feeling as well, but also challenge it. I give you one sort of tip how I do that, is with every interview I do, and I probably do sort of 10 to 20 a week at the moment, is when I go into the interview, in the very first sort of 2 to 5 minutes latest, I write down whether I like the candidate or not. Because you always have this initial reaction, like, do I think that this person fits? And then for the next 30 to 35 minutes of the interview, I try to convince myself of the opposite. So if I first wrote down that, yeah, this candidate really doesn't seem to fit, then I try to find a lot of reasons why this candidate fits, but also the other way around. If you first say, this candidate is a great candidate from the first impression, and you always, like everyone, we're people, we always have this first reaction, whether we think someone's good at something or not. But then spending the rest of the interview trying to convince yourself that the opposite is true and that the candidate really isn't fitting is, I think, a really valuable exercise in order to ask the right questions and in order to hire the right people, because otherwise you might be sort of biased by the first few seconds and then just hire the wrong person. So quickly, this is the hiring process we've defined, and obviously use our tool to track it as well. So we first have our HR team filter the candidates by the predefined criteria. Then we have a team lead interview. This is where, for example, the head of sales would interview and check for the fit with the role and our expected working style. Then we have a peer interview, so we involve the people from the team who will be working with the company, with the new hire, and they check for the team fit. Basically, is this a nice person? Do I want to work with that person? Then we have a value interview, and this is what I just said. This is where we have alignment with our core value of the company culture, and this is where we check, does this person fit into the company? And this is where sort of an external person who does not have any urgency bias, someone else from the management team. So if the head of sales is up here, this could be our head of customer success, who then checks whether this is a good fit and filters out candidates. And then finally, this is a founder interview where me or one of my co-founders gets involved. This is also a final calibration. And sort of in this last step right here, we usually kick out sort of 40% of the applicants. And that's not because we're mean and we want to annoy everyone above here, but this is because in a startup you always have this urgency to hire someone, and people push, and that's not because they're meaning it badly, but they push people, candidates through the funnel, which might not be that suitable. So this is why sort of these calibration interviews are really, really important in my opinion. So quickly summing up, formulating the core vision, core purpose and company vision helps you design the right organization in order to reach that. Then setting the processes for goals, the processes to set goals and also how to measure them helps you get there and helps you have the organization do the right things. And then really continue to focus on hiring the right people, helps you getting them into the right positions and doing the things you want to do. That was a quick summary. Hope I'm roughly in time.
Perfect. Thank you very much. When I learned, like working at a public radio, that speed is all, and great. You could do a news show like where I take 1 hour, you do it in 30 minutes. This is great. So we could hire you then to read out the news faster. Thank you very much, Hanno.
Question is, anyone got something out of my?
Of course, people are ravished. My first question is: when you founded Personio, were you like your first own client? Did you call yourself and Hanno, it's me, Hanno, I need help?
Yeah, we
because you were not existing at the time, but you could have used your company to grow so fast. You understand my question? No.
No.
Okay, that was very through the thing, but I ask it again
Okay.
after we have some questions in the audience. Yeah, this gentleman there and there the lady. So we have again a microphone, I think. It's not automatically working. Yeah, speak
How
up.
do you define the core values and how do you make sure that the people, assess whether people fit your core values?
Yeah. So in the end, the way we defined it was we had a large session and the founder and management team looking at the people we really think are striving in our organization and which are doing a great job. And then we sort of wrote down their qualities and wrote down the things. And we actually recently switched that. We first had only 5 core values, and we had definitions from that, and then examples, and it was very undefinable. So we recently redefined them and get into a few core values, but also operating principles. And that's really concrete actions which are operationalizable, so you can really interview for them. So one example would be diligent is one of our operating principles, which is really important to us, and therefore we can really check in the interview. We have a specific set of questions how we can ask for that, for prior experiences or how people would approach things. But this is how we try to assess these criteria, and then also later on feedback on them. So we have on the one hand these operating principles, which are very clear ways how we want to work, and then we check on them through predefined questions.
Right. Next question. Sorry, were you ready?
It was just a follow-up question. You
Yeah.
feel like this is have you had to fine-tune this approach, or was this right from the start?
As I said, like the initial way we did it was wrong. By sort of if you just have these 5 words, which could be any company, and you try to define them in huge text, and no one really remembers what they actually mean for Personio. But that's why I think the fine-tuning we did roughly half a year ago really helped us with this operating principles approach. It's also you can look it up online. There's a few companies like HubSpot also using that approach, and I find that really valuable to have this clear guidance on how we want to work and how we want to approach things.
Okay. There was one last question here. The lady, Florian here in the back. In the back. No, back. She's waving. Yes.
Hi, my name is Kim. I have a question. You are deciding yourself and the founding team on hiring the people. But what happens, for how long do you think you can do this still yourself? And when will be the time that you will hand this over to somebody? And how will you then make sure that still the right people are in the company.
Yeah. So I think one thing I missed by speeding through the process is that every step in the process has a veto right. So I'm not more important in the process than, for example, a peer interview. If they say they don't like it, I also don't get to see them. The only reason why I'm in the end is because I have to interview much more people than them, and therefore I try to sort of obviously only see the candidates which everyone else likes, but it's not that because I'm more important. So I also trust everyone else in the company to make the right decisions, but it's just in the end you have probably the best overview. That's why I'm trying to do that. And yeah, right now we're 75 and we have 35 open positions on the website, so we'll probably soon be 100. So I guess I hope that we can keep that up for another maybe year or something until we're sort of 150 to have a really solid base. And then probably at some point we'll have to sort of exclude certain levels. For example, interns and working students, at the moment I'm not interviewing anymore. That's not really because I don't trust other people in the organization to do it, but it's just they have different bias sometimes towards hiring a person than you have.
All right, thank you very much. And as a skipper and as a sailor, as you are, what can you learn from sailing?
I think I've never worked in a leadership position before, and now leading 75 people. I think the only learnings I have for that was from sailing and then from skippering people. So it's I guess leadership coaching.
Yes, and look at the weather. Thank you very much, Hanno, Renner. Very interesting. Big round of applause. Thank you very much, Hanno.